Captain Daniel Carter stood at the entrance of the Crystalline Palace and tried not to show his amazement at what he saw before him. The entire structure seemed to be carved from a single massive gem that caught the light of 3 suns and split it into 1,000 dancing colors. Across the marble courtyard, the Velthara Empire had ruled this sector of space for over 10,000 years. Their technology was far beyond what Earth could currently produce, and their influence stretched across hundreds of star systems, which made this diplomatic mission crucial for humanity's future among the galactic community. Daniel adjusted his dress uniform and walked forward with Lieutenant Ashley. Morgan's final words still echoing in his mind from their briefing that morning. She had warned him that the Velthara were known for their pride and their tendency to view younger species as little more than interesting curiosities. The palace doors opened without a sound, and Daniel entered a vast hall where dozens of alien dignitaries from various species stood in small groups, their conversations creating a low hum that filled the space. He recognized a few species from his training, but many were completely unknown to him. A tall Velthara female approached him with movements that seemed to flow like water. Her skin had an iridescent quality that shifted between blue and silver, and her eyes were large and dark like pools of ink. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid light. "Captain Carter of Earth," she said in perfect English that surprised him. "I am Counselor Nera. I will escort you to Queen Xylaria." Daniel nodded and followed her through the crowd, noticing how other species stepped aside quickly when they saw the Velthara counselor approaching. There was respect in their movements, but also something else that he could not quite identify. Was it fear or perhaps caution? They walked through several corridors that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The walls displayed scenes from across the galaxy, some showing peaceful worlds and others depicting great battles from ages past. "Your species is quite young by galactic standards," Nera said as they walked. "Yet you have spread across your local systems with remarkable speed. Humans are adaptable," Daniel replied carefully, keeping his tone neutral and diplomatic. "Indeed," Nera said, and something in her voice made Daniel's instincts sharpen. "The Queen finds that particular quality very interesting." They entered a smaller chamber where the walls were lined with what appeared to be specimens from various worlds, plants, minerals, and even what looked like preserved creatures in stasis fields. Daniel felt a cold touch of unease run down his spine. Queen Xylaria sat on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself. She was larger than Nera, and her presence filled the room with an almost physical weight. Her robes were more elaborate, and they moved as if alive. "The human captain," the Queen said, her voice carrying an odd musical quality. "Welcome to my palace." Daniel bowed as protocol required. "Your Majesty, I bring greetings from Earth and hope for productive negotiations." The Queen smiled, and it did not reach her eyes. "I have been looking forward to meeting one of your kind. Humans are fascinating creatures, survivors of a death world, who somehow managed to reach the stars with primitive technology. We learned to make the most of what we had," Daniel said. "Tell me," the Queen continued, leaning forward slightly, "is it true that your planet has weather patterns violent enough to level entire cities and geological activity that can destroy continents? Earth can be harsh," Daniel admitted, "but it also taught us to be resourceful." The formal reception began, and Daniel found himself surrounded by Velthara officials who asked increasingly pointed questions about human biology, their ability to survive in extreme conditions, and their rapid expansion across their home system. He tried to contact Ashley on his communicator, but found that the signal was being blocked. The interference was subtle but unmistakable, and his unease grew stronger as the reception wound down and other dignitaries began to leave. Daniel prepared to return to his ship. The horizon's edge was in orbit above the planet, and he was looking forward to debriefing with his crew. Captain Carter. Queen Xylaria's voice stopped him as he moved toward the exit. I would appreciate a private audience. There are matters of culture I wish to discuss, but are not suitable for public conversation. Every instinct Daniel had developed during his years in the diplomatic corps told him to politely decline. But refusing a direct request from the Queen could damage the entire mission before it truly began. Of course. Your Majesty, he said. Nera and the other officials left the chamber until only Daniel and the Queen remained. She gestured toward a side door that he had not noticed before. This way, she said. Rising from her throne with that same flowing movement, Daniel followed her into a private chamber that was smaller, but no less impressive than the throne room. The walls here displayed scenes of space and distant nebulae, and the furniture looked both comfortable and expensive. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. Then he heard something that made his blood run cold, the distinct, mechanical click of locks. Engaging Queen Xylaria turned to face him, and her smile was different now. Less diplomatic and more predatory. You're not going anywhere. Human, she said softly, moving to stand between him and the door. The door stays locked tonight. Daniel forced himself to remain calm. Your Majesty, I don't understand. I collect interesting specimens. Captain, the Queen said, gesturing to the walls where he now noticed small alcoves he had missed before. Each one contained what looked like living quarters, species that show unusual potential, abilities that defy their technological level. You cannot be serious, Daniel said, his mind racing through possible responses. I am entirely serious, she replied. Humans have accomplished what should be impossible. Your world should have killed you long before you developed tools. Yet here you are, spreading across the galaxy with determination that borders on reckless. Earth will not accept this, Daniel said firmly. My crew knows I am here. The Queen laughed, a sound like crystal bells. Your ship cannot penetrate the shielding around this palace. Your Lieutenant Morgan has already tried to contact you 17 times. All signals are blocked. Daniel moved to the door and examined the locking mechanism. It was biometric and keyed specifically to Velthara physiology. There was no handle or manual override. I have collected representatives from 12 species, the Queen continued, settling into a chair as if they were having a pleasant conversation. Each one showed promise, abilities that intrigue me. You will be the 13th. You are making a serious mistake, Daniel said. Turning to face her, humans do not respond well to captivity. We shall see, the Queen said. I have time, and you are not going anywhere. Daniel looked around the chamber, searching for any weakness or opportunity. The walls were reinforced crystal. The door was sealed, and guards would certainly be posted outside. Ashley would realize something was wrong. He knew his communication officer well enough to trust that she would investigate. But the palace shielding would make finding him nearly impossible. Why do this? Daniel asked. Deciding to buy time and gather information, you rule an empire. You have everything you could want. Knowledge, the Queen said simply. Power comes from understanding what makes other species strong. You humans survived a world that kills. I want to know how. I want to know what makes you different. Daniel met her gaze steadily. You will find out, Your Majesty. But perhaps not in the way you expect. The Queen's smile widened. I look forward to it. As the hours passed and no rescue came, Daniel began to understand the full scope of his situation. He was trapped in the heart of an alien palace, held by a queen who collected beings like trophies. And his crew had no way to reach him, but Daniel Carter had not survived Earth's harsh environments and navigated the dangerous waters of galactic politics by giving up easily. He was human, and humans had one quality that even the most advanced species often underestimated. They were very good at escaping impossible situations. he settled in to wait and watch and learn. Because locked doors had never stopped humanity before, and they would not start now. The first night in captivity was the hardest. Not because of the physical conditions. The chamber was comfortable and well appointed, with a bed that adjusted to his body and temperature, controls that kept the air pleasant, but because Daniel knew that every hour he remained trapped was another hour of worry for his crew. He spent those initial hours examining every centimeter of his prison. The walls were smooth crystal that showed no seams or joints. The door had no visible mechanism from the inside, and the ceiling was too high to reach, even if he stacked all the furniture. Queen Xylaria had provided him with food and water through a small opening that appeared in the wall at regular intervals. The meals were carefully prepared and nutritionally balanced for human biology, but they were bland and uninteresting on the second day. The Queen visited him for the first time since his imprisonment. She entered through the door with 2 guards who remained outside. Her expression was curious as she studied him. "You slept only 4 hours last night," she said. "My sensors indicate you were awake and moving for most of the darkness period. Humans can function on limited sleep when necessary," Daniel replied, keeping his voice level. "Fascinating." The Queen moved closer, circling him like a scientist observing an experiment. "The other species I have collected require consistent rest periods. Deprivation causes them significant distress." Daniel said nothing. He had already decided that his best strategy was to be unpredictable. The Queen expected him to either break down emotionally or attempt escape through violence. He would do neither. "I have been studying your species' history," she continued. "You fought wars among yourselves for thousands of years. Your world tried to kill you with storms and earthquakes and diseases. Yet you survived and eventually thrived. Adversity builds strength." Daniel said. The Queen laughed. "Such a simple philosophy. My people achieved greatness through inheritance. We were given advanced technology by the civilization that came before us. We never had to struggle or suffer. Then you have never truly been tested." Daniel observed. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "You think your suffering makes you superior. I think it makes us different," Daniel corrected. "Not better or worse, just different." She left after that first visit, but she returned again in the evening. This time, bringing a holographic display that showed various death worlds from across the galaxy. "Your Earth ranks among the most hostile habitable planets known to the galactic community," she explained, showing images of violent storms and volcanic eruptions. "Most species would have died out in their primitive stages on such a world. We adapted," Daniel said simply. "Show me," the Queen demanded. "Show me this adaptation you speak of." Daniel began to exercise. Not the gentle movements the Velthara used for health maintenance, but the intense physical training that human soldiers used to stay combat ready. He did push-ups and sit-ups and squats. He moved through combat drills, and he pushed his body until sweat poured down his face. The Queen watched with growing alarm. "You are damaging yourself." "I'm maintaining myself," Daniel said between breaths. "Humans need stress to stay strong. Our bodies break down without it." "Barbaric," the Queen muttered. But Daniel could see the fascination in her eyes. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon's Edge, Lieutenant Ashley Morgan was coordinating with the rest of the crew to locate their missing captain. The Velthara officials insisted that Daniel had extended his stay voluntarily, but Ashley knew that was a lie. She had worked with Daniel for 3 years and knew he would never lose contact without explanation. Something was very wrong. "The palace has shielding that blocks our scanners," reported Lieutenant Kyle Barnes from the science station. "I cannot get any readings from inside. Then we find another way," Ashley said firmly. She began researching the Velthara Empire and discovered disturbing rumors about Queen Xylaria's private collection. Several species had filed diplomatic complaints over the years about missing representatives who had visited the palace. But the complaints always disappeared or were withdrawn. Ashley contacted some of those species directly and slowly pieced together a pattern. The queen was known to collect beings she found interesting, keeping them in her palace for study. "We need to get him out," Ashley said to her senior staff. "But we cannot start a war with the Volthara Empire." "What if we do not start it?" suggested Kyle. "What if we just remind them that humans are not easy prey?" Back in his cell, Daniel was implementing his plan. He began deliberately altering his behavior patterns to confuse the monitoring systems. He would sleep at random times, exercise at odd hours, and occasionally just sit completely still for long periods. The guards outside his door reported his strange behavior to the queen, who became more intrigued and more cautious. On the third day, she brought scientists with her. They scanned Daniel with various devices and asked him countless questions about human biology. "Your body temperature is higher than most species," one scientist noted, "and your metabolism burns energy at an alarming rate." "We evolved to be active hunters," Daniel explained. "We need energy to move and think and survive." "Inefficient," the scientist declared. "Effective," Daniel countered. "Humans can outlast almost any predator on our world through sheer endurance. We might not be the fastest or strongest, but we do not quit." The queen dismissed her scientists and sat across from Daniel. "You are trying to make yourself seem more dangerous than you are. I am trying to make you understand what you have actually captured," Daniel said. Meeting her gaze, "You think I am a specimen to study. But humans are not butterflies pinned to a board." "What are you then?" the queen asked. "We are survivors," Daniel said. "And survivors always find a way." That night, Daniel noticed something through the window of his chamber, a pattern in the starlight that seemed irregular. He watched carefully and realized it was not random at all. It was deliberate. Someone was using a light source to send him a message in Morse code, an ancient human communication method that was so primitive the Volthara monitoring systems would never recognize it as anything but stellar fluctuation. The message was simple: "We know you are there. Working on rescue. Stay ready." Daniel's heart lifted. Ashley had found him. Now he just needed to survive long enough for her to execute whatever plan she was developing. The queen visited him again on the fourth day, and this time she seemed frustrated. "You are not behaving as I expected." "What did you expect?" Daniel asked. "Fear, anger, desperation," she said. "The others I collected showed these emotions. They tried to escape, or they broke down and accepted their fate. I am doing neither." Daniel said. "Why not?" the queen demanded. "Because I understand something you do not," Daniel said. Standing to face her directly, "You built this prison for creatures who accept captivity as final. Humans never accept anything as final." The queen's expression shifted, and for the first time, Daniel saw uncertainty in her eyes. "You think your crew will rescue you. I know they are trying," Daniel said. "But even if they fail, I will find another way." "That is what humans do. We find ways. There is no way out of this chamber," the queen said firmly. "I designed it myself." "Then you designed it for species who think like you," Daniel said, "who rely on their technology and their careful plans. You did not design it for someone from a death world who learned to survive by being unpredictable." The queen left without another word, and Daniel could see that he had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. She was beginning to wonder if she truly understood what she had captured over the next few days. Daniel continued his strategy of being unpredictable. He would answer some questions honestly and deflect others. He would cooperate with some requests and refuse others. He kept the queen and her scientists constantly off balance, also continued to refuse the prepared meals, instead requesting raw ingredients. When they asked why, he explained that humans evolved as omnivores who could eat foods that would poison other species. "Bring me something you consider inedible," he challenged they. brought him a root vegetable from a nearby world that was known to be toxic to most species. Daniel examined it carefully and then ate a small piece. The Velthara scientists watched in horror as he showed no adverse reaction. Humans have very adaptable digestive systems, he explained. We learned to eat almost anything because on Earth, being picky meant starving. The Queen watched this demonstration with an expression Daniel could not read. Was it fear or fascination or perhaps both? You are not what I expected. She finally said, That is the point, Daniel replied. You expected a specimen. You got a human. That night. Ashley's message came through again. Plan ready. Need you to create distraction in 2 days. Daniel smiled in the darkness. He had 2 days to prepare. 2 days to make the Queen question everything she thought she knew about keeping humans contained. Had survived 3 days in what was supposed to be an inescapable prison. Now he just needed to survive 2 more and show Queen Zolaria why humans had a reputation across Earth for escaping from impossible situations. The locked door had kept him contained, but it had not broken him. And that was going to make all the difference. By the 5th day of captivity, Daniel had learned the rhythms of the palace like a heartbeat. The guards changed shifts every 6 hours with precision that would make a chronometer jealous. The Queen visited him twice daily at almost exactly the same times. And the automated systems that controlled his chamber followed patterns so regular they might as well have been written in Stone Queen. Xylaria arrived for her morning visit carrying a data tablet. Her expression was thoughtful as she settled into the chair across from him. I have been reviewing the records of your species' expansion into space, she said. You achieved faster than light travel barely 2 generations ago. Yet you have already established colonies on 17 worlds. Humans are eager to explore, Daniel said. Eager to expand, the Queen corrected. Some species find this concerning. They worry that humanity will spread like a plague across the galaxy. We prefer to think of it as sharing the neighborhood. Daniel replied with a slight smile. The Queen did not return the smile. I brought you food that my scientists assure me is compatible with human biology. She gestured, and a guard entered carrying a tray. It was a carefully arranged meal with proteins, grains, and what looked like vegetables. Everything was precisely portioned and balanced. Daniel looked at the food and shook his head. I would prefer raw ingredients. Why? The Queen asked. Though she had heard this request before, because humans evolved to process our own food, Daniel explained. We learned to cook and combine ingredients in ways that maximize nutrition. Your prepared meals are too simple, too easy. The Queen's eyes narrowed. You reject comfort. I reject weakness, Daniel said. On Earth, taking the easy path often led to death. We learned to choose the harder road because it made us stronger. Show me. The Queen demanded. Daniel requested specific items, raw grains that needed to be crushed, tough vegetables that required preparation, and protein that other species would find difficult to digest. When they brought these ingredients, he used the basic utensils in his chamber to prepare a meal that made the Velthara scientists, watching through the monitoring system, recoil in horror. He ate foods that were borderline toxic to other species. His human digestive system breaking down compounds that would sicken the Velthara. And he did it calmly while explaining the evolutionary advantages of such adaptability. On Earth, we learned to eat almost anything, he said between bites. Plants that other creatures avoided, animals that were dangerous to hunt, even foods that were mildly poisonous if we prepared them correctly. Barbaric. One of the scientists muttered. Practical, Daniel corrected. When your world tries to kill you, you learn to use every resource available. The Queen dismissed her scientists and remained alone with Daniel. You are trying to unsettle me. I'm trying to help you understand what you actually captured, Daniel said. You see me as a specimen. But I am the product of a world that made war on its own inhabitants for millions of years. Your world is a rock circling a star, the Queen said. It has no consciousness, no malice. Tell that to the humans who died in earthquakes and floods and volcanic eruptions, Daniel replied. Earth does not care if we live or die, it simply is. And we learn to survive anyway. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. I collected a specimen from a Death World species once. They were called the Craver. They were powerful warriors with thick armor and great strength. What happened to them? Daniel asked. They became boring, the Queen said. Their strength was all they had. Once I understood it, there was nothing more to learn. I released them after 6 months. Daniel filed this information away. The Queen released specimens when they no longer interested her. That was useful to know. Humans are not just strong, he said. Strength is our least interesting quality. Then what is your most interesting quality? The Queen asked. Adaptability, Daniel said immediately. We change to meet challenges. We learn and grow and overcome. You cannot understand us by observation, because we do not stay the same. That evening, Daniel received another message from Ashley through the light pattern in the stars. This time, it contained more detail. Found weakness in palace systems. Environmental controls designed for narrow comfort range. Plan to create fluctuations. Daniel studied this information carefully. The Valthara had evolved on a gentle world with stable climate and consistent conditions. Their technology reflected this preference for controlled environments. He began asking the Queen pointed questions about her species during her next visit. Tell me about your homeworld, Your Majesty. The Queen seemed surprised by his interest, but answered, Valthara Prime is a paradise, stable weather, mild temperatures. Abundant resources? No harsh seasons. Daniel asked. Seasons are predictable and gentle, she said. We have never needed to adapt to extremes. How did your species achieve such advanced technology? Daniel continued. The Queen's expression shifted slightly. We inherited it from the precursors, the civilization that came before us. They left behind knowledge and devices that we studied and improved, so you never had to develop technology from nothing, Daniel observed. You started with a foundation. Is that relevant? The Queen asked defensively. It explains a great deal, Daniel said. You achieved your power through inheritance and careful preservation, not through struggle and innovation. Power is power, the Queen said sharply. How it is achieved matters less than what is done with it. Perhaps, Daniel said. But it shapes how you think about problems. You try to control everything because you have never had to adapt to chaos. The Queen stood abruptly. This conversation is over. After she left, Daniel began to implement the next phase of his plan. He started deliberately affecting the environmental controls in his chamber by generating excess heat through intense exercise and then suddenly stopping, causing temperature fluctuations. The automated systems tried to compensate, but they were designed for steady states. Not rapid changes. Small alerts began appearing in the palace monitoring systems. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon's Edge, Ashley had assembled a team and was coordinating with representatives from other species who had lost members to the Queen's collection. The palace environmental systems are its weakness, she explained to her crew. The Valthara cannot tolerate significant temperature or atmospheric variations. If we create enough fluctuation, we can force them to lower their shields to vent the excess energy. How do we create those fluctuations? Kyle asked. We do not, Ashley said with a smile. Daniel does. He just needs to know when to start. She sent another message through the light pattern. Tomorrow at dawn, create maximum environmental stress. We will be ready. Inside his chamber, Daniel received the message and began planning. He would need to push his body to its limits, generating enough heat and movement to force the systems into emergency mode. The Queen visited him one final time that evening, and Daniel noticed she seemed distracted. "Your behavior is causing disruptions in my monitoring systems. I am just being human," Daniel said innocently. "My scientists say you are deliberately creating temperature variations," she accused. "Humans are warm-blooded creatures who regulate our own temperature." Daniel explained, "When we exercise, we generate heat. When we rest, we cool. This is natural for us. It is disruptive," the Queen said. "Then perhaps your systems are designed for creatures who stay still," Daniel suggested. "Humans are not good at staying still." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "You are planning something." "I'm always planning something," Daniel said honestly. "That is another human trait. We think ahead. We prepare. We adapt our plans as situations change. There is no escape from this chamber," the Queen said firmly. "You have said that before," Daniel replied. "Yet here we are, still having this conversation. Which means you are not as certain as you claim to be." The Queen left without responding, and Daniel prepared himself for what would come tomorrow. He would need every ounce of endurance his Deathworld evolution had given him as the night deepened. Daniel thought about Earth and all the challenges humanity had overcome: ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters, extinction events that had wiped out countless other species. And through it all, humans had survived by being adaptable and relentless and clever. Queen Xylaria had made a fundamental error. She had assumed that capturing a human was the same as containing one. But humans had spent their entire evolutionary history escaping from predators and prisons and impossible situations. Tomorrow, he would show her what it truly meant to try to hold a human against his will. And she would learn why locked doors had never been enough to stop humanity from reaching for freedom. The stars outside his window seemed to pulse with Ashley's final message of the night. "Ready when you are." Daniel smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow the Queen would discover that her perfect prison had one flaw she had never anticipated. It was designed to hold creatures who accepted their fate, and humans never, ever did that. Dawn came to the palace in waves of pink and gold light that filtered through the crystalline walls. Daniel had not slept at all during the night. Instead, he had spent the hours preparing his body and mind for what was coming. Began with stretching exercises that would warm his muscles, then moved into more intense movements designed to rapidly increase his core temperature and heart rate. Push-ups and burpees and jumping exercises that would have seemed insane to the Velthareth. Environmental sensors in his chamber immediately began registering alerts as the temperature climbed. The automated systems tried to compensate by increasing cooling. But Daniel simply pushed harder. Sweat poured down his face and soaked his clothes. His heart pounded in his chest, and his breathing came in controlled gasps. But he did not stop. This was what humans did. They pushed past comfortable limits outside his chamber. Alarms began sounding throughout the palace systems. The environmental controls were detecting unprecedented fluctuations and struggling to maintain stability. Guards rushed to check on the human prisoner, expecting to find him ill or injured. Instead, they found him performing exercises that seemed designed to break his own body. "Stop," one guard commanded through the door's communication system. "You are damaging yourself." "I am fine," Daniel called back between breaths. "This is normal human activity," the guard reported to his superiors, and within minutes, Queen Xylaria herself arrived outside Daniel's chamber. She watched through the monitoring screens as the human pushed his body to what seemed like the breaking point. "Make him stop," she ordered her scientists. "We cannot," one replied nervously. "He is not violating any rules. He is simply exercising. His body temperature is dangerous," another scientist protested. "He will cause system failures." The Queen watched Daniel for another moment, then made a decision that surprised everyone. "Open the door." The guards hesitated. "Your Majesty, he could be dangerous in this state." "Open it," she commanded. The locks disengaged, and the door swung open. Daniel stopped his exercises and stood facing the Queen, breathing hard but controlled. His clothes were drenched with sweat, but his eyes were clear and focused. "You are trying to break my environmental systems," the Queen accused. "I am trying to survive," Daniel corrected. "Humans need physical stress to maintain health. Your comfortable prison was slowly weakening me." The Queen studied him carefully. "You planned this." "I always have a plan," Daniel said. Usually several. For a long moment they stood facing each other. Then the Queen spoke. "I will offer you a bargain." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I am listening. If you truly want to show me what makes humans special, demonstrate it practically," she said. "I have a problem that has plagued my empire for years. If you can solve it, I will release you and reconsider my collection practices. And if I cannot solve it," Daniel asked, "then you submit to my study willingly and without further disruption." The Queen said Daniel considered this carefully. It was a gamble, but it was also an opportunity. "What is the problem?" The Queen led him from his chamber for the first time in days. They walked through the palace corridors with guards surrounding them, until they reached a control room filled with holographic displays. "Colony World, Valthar 7, she explained, showing him data streams and reports. "We established it 40 years ago, but the colonists struggle. Environmental fluctuations stress our systems and reduce quality of life." Daniel studied the data. The planet had dynamic weather patterns and geological activity. It reminded him of Earth in many ways, beautiful but unpredictable. "Your automated systems try to control the environment," he observed. "They fight against the planet's natural cycles. They are designed to maintain optimal conditions." A Valthara engineer explained, "Optimal for your species," Daniel said, "but not optimal for the planet itself." He spent hours reviewing the colony data, asking questions about the failures and examining the patterns. The more he learned, the more familiar the problem became. "This world is like early Earth," he finally said. "Your systems fail because they treat the planet as an enemy to be defeated. But you cannot defeat a planet. You can only learn to work with it." "Explain." The Queen demanded. Daniel began sketching ideas on the holographic interface. "On Earth, we learn to build structures that flex with earthquakes instead of resisting them. We developed agriculture that worked with seasonal changes rather than fighting them. We created systems with redundancy and adaptability." "That seems inefficient," the engineer protested. "It seems that way until your rigid systems fail completely," Daniel countered. "Redundancy means that when one part breaks, others compensate. Flexibility means that stress is distributed instead of concentrated." He showed them designs based on human engineering principles, buildings that could withstand the planet's seismic activity, agricultural systems that adapted to weather fluctuations, power grids that rerouted around failures. "These systems are less elegant than ours," the Queen observed, "but they will work," Daniel said confidently, "because they are designed by someone whose species learned to survive chaos, not control it." The Queen considered his proposal, then ordered her engineers to implement his designs on a trial basis within hours. The reports from Colony World 7 began to change. The environmental fluctuations did not disappear, but the systems stopped fighting them and instead flowed with them. Stress levels among the colonists dropped dramatically as the infrastructure stopped failing. The Queen watched the data streams with an expression Daniel had not seen before, genuine surprise mixed with something that might have been respect. "Your solution works," she said quietly. "Of course it does," Daniel replied, "because it is based on millions of years of human evolution on a planet that tried very hard to kill us." The Queen dismissed her engineers and turned to face Daniel directly. "I have collected specimens from dozens of species over the years, studying their strengths and cataloging their abilities." "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because my people achieved greatness through inheritance, not effort," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. We have technology we do not fully understand, power we did not earn. I wanted to learn what makes other species strong, so I could understand what my people lack. Daniel felt a surge of understanding. You fear that your empire is built on sand. I fear that when crisis comes, we will not know how to adapt, the Queen said. We have never had to struggle, never had to overcome. We simply inherited and preserved, then stopped collecting specimens and start building partnerships, Daniel said firmly. Every species you trapped in your collection could have taught you something valuable, but only if you treated them as equals rather than curiosities. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke a single word. Leave. Daniel blinked in surprise. What? You are free to go, she said. Return to your ship. I will not keep you here. Just like that? Daniel asked suspiciously. Just like that, the Queen confirmed. You proved your point. Humans are not specimens to be studied in isolation. They are partners to be engaged with openly. Daniel started to walk toward the exit, then stopped and turned back. What about the others in your collection? The Queen's expression shifted. What about them? Release them too, Daniel said. Give them the same choice you are giving me, freedom and partnership, instead of captivity and observation. Why do you care about them? The Queen asked. Because they are people? Not things, Daniel said. And because humans know what it feels like to be underestimated and dismissed. We remember what it is like to be seen as primitive or lesser. The Queen considered this, then nodded slowly. I will release them and offer them diplomatic relations. But only if you help me explain why. Agreed, Daniel said over the next hours. The Queen's collection was systematically freed. Representatives from 12 different species were brought out of their chambers and given the choice to either depart immediately or stay to discuss possible cooperation. Most chose to stay, at least initially, because they wanted to understand what had changed. Daniel spent time with each of them, helping them process their captivity and connecting them with their home governments. He also worked with Ashley, who had brought the Horizon's Edge down to the palace landing area. I was ready to stage a rescue operation, Ashley said with a smile. You had us worried. I know, Daniel replied. But sometimes the best escape is the one where nobody has to break down doors. Queen Xylaria called a formal gathering, where she publicly announced the dissolution of her collection and the beginning of a new diplomatic initiative. She spoke about her species' fear of stagnation and her desire to learn genuine cooperation. The human showed me that strength comes not from control but from adaptability, she told the assembled representatives. I invite each of you to consider partnerships with the Velthara Empire, not as subjects or specimens, but as equals later in a private meeting. The Queen asked Daniel a final question. How did you remain calm when I trapped you? Daniel smiled. Because I have survived worse. Earth taught humanity that comfort is temporary and challenges are inevitable. A few days in a nice prison was barely an inconvenience compared to ice ages and asteroid impacts. What sustained you? She asked. Hope, Daniel said simply, and the knowledge that my crew would never abandon me. Humans are social creatures. We survive together or not at all. The Queen nodded slowly. The palace that had been Daniel's prison for 6 days now felt different. The crystalline walls still shimmered with captured light, and the corridors still shifted with holographic displays. But the atmosphere had changed from one of captivity to one of possibility. Daniel stood in what had once been the Queen's collection chamber and watched as workers dismantled the holding cells. Each alcove that had imprisoned the representative from another species was being converted into something new: meeting rooms and cultural exchange spaces. Queen Xylaria stood beside him, her posture less rigid than it had been during their first encounter. My advisors think I am making a mistake, she said quietly. What do you think? Daniel asked, I think I have been making mistakes for years, she replied. Collecting instead of cooperating, observing instead of engaging. Your species forced me to confront those errors. Humans have a talent for disrupting the status quo, Daniel said with a slight smile. The Queen almost laughed. That is an understatement. In 6 days you managed to do what decades of diplomatic pressure could not. You made me question everything. Ashley approached them carrying a data tablet. Captain, the treaty negotiations are ready to resume. The Valthara Diplomatic Corps wants to discuss the formal alliance. Tell them I will be there shortly, Daniel said after Ashley left. The Queen turned to face Daniel directly. I wanted to thank you before you returned to your duties. For what? Daniel asked. Genuinely curious. For not hating me? She said simply. I imprisoned you, threatened your freedom, treated you as a specimen rather than a person. Yet you chose to help me rather than seek revenge. Daniel considered this carefully before responding. Revenge would have been easy but pointless. What you did was wrong, but destroying you would not undo it. Helping you change seemed more productive. Is that a human philosophy? The Queen asked. It is a practical one, Daniel said. Humans learned long ago that cooperation usually produces better results than conflict. We spent thousands of years fighting each other before we figured that out. The Queen was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. When I trapped you, were you ever truly afraid? Daniel thought back to that first night. The sound of locks engaging and the realization that he was completely isolated from his crew. Yes, he admitted, but fear is not the same as despair. I was afraid, but I also knew that humans have escaped from worse situations throughout our history. What gave you that confidence? She asked. Experience, Daniel said. Both personal and historical, my species has been locked up. Hunted down, written off as doomed, and we always found a way forward. Sometimes through strength, sometimes through cleverness. Usually through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. The Queen nodded slowly. Your species will be a powerful force in the galaxy. We would rather be a positive force, Daniel corrected gently. Power without purpose is just noise. Over the next weeks, the palace transformed completely. The collection chambers became a cultural exchange center where representatives from dozens of species came to share knowledge and build understanding. The 12 species that had been freed from the Queen's collection became the foundation of what would later be called the Cooperative Alliance. And Earth was given a position of honor within it due to Daniel's role in creating the opportunity. Daniel met regularly with each freed representative, helping them process their experiences and find ways to turn their ordeal into something constructive. One of them, a being named Crix from a species called the Turvani, asked Daniel a question that echoed what many were thinking. How did you do it? How did you turn a captor into an ally? I did not turn her into anything, Daniel explained. I just helped her see what she already was, someone who wanted to learn and grow but did not know how to do it properly. You are more forgiving than I would be, Crix said. Maybe, Daniel replied. But holding grudges takes energy that could be better spent building something new. The formal treaty negotiations resumed, and this time they proceeded with genuine mutual respect. The Valthara offered Earth access to advanced medical technology and star charts for unexplored regions in exchange. Earth agreed to provide consultation on adaptive engineering and Deathworld survival techniques. We are trading knowledge for knowledge, Daniel explained to his crew during a briefing. They have technology we need. We have experience they lack. Together we can accomplish more than either species could alone. Kyle raised a question that had been on everyone's mind. Do we trust them after what the Queen did to you? Trust is earned over time, Daniel said. But we have to start somewhere. The Queen made a mistake, and she is trying to correct it. That deserves acknowledgement, Ashley added her perspective. The captain is right. Holding the entire Velthara Empire responsible for one ruler's actions would be short-sighted. We judge species by their actions going forward, not just their past. The treaty was signed in a ceremony that brought together representatives from Earth, the Velthara Empire, and the 12 species that had formed the Cooperative Alliance. Queen Zilaria spoke first, addressing the gathered dignitaries with unexpected humility. For years, I tried to understand strength through observation and collection, she said. I believed that by studying other species, I could unlock the secrets of their success. Captain Carter taught me that true strength comes not from studying others, but from working with them. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he kept his remarks brief. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find friends and partners. We faced skepticism and sometimes hostility because we were young and unproven. The Velthara could have dismissed us as primitives. Instead, they chose to see our potential. That choice will benefit us all. After the ceremony, Daniel and the Queen had one final private conversation in what had been his prison cell. The room was now empty, except for a single window that showed the stars. "What will you do with this space?" Daniel asked. "I am not sure yet," the Queen admitted. "Part of me wants to preserve it as a reminder of my mistakes. But that seems self-indulgent. Turn it into something forward-looking," Daniel suggested. "Maybe a place where young diplomats can come to learn about building bridges instead of walls." The Queen smiled. The first truly genuine smile Daniel had seen from her. "That is a very human solution. Take something broken and make it useful." "We have a lot of practice," Daniel said. "I have one final question," the Queen said. "If I had not released you, if your Lieutenant Morgan had launched her rescue operation, what would have happened?" Daniel considered lying or deflecting, but he chose honesty instead. "Ashley would have gotten me out. It might have started a diplomatic incident or even a conflict, but she would not have left me here." "How can you be so certain?" the Queen asked. "Because that is what humans do for each other," Daniel said simply. "We do not abandon our own ever. It is one of our most fundamental values." The Queen nodded. "I am glad I chose to open the door rather than force her to break it down." "So am I," Daniel agreed as he prepared to leave the palace for the final time. Daniel reflected on everything that had happened. 6 days ago, he had walked through these corridors as a prisoner. Now he walked as a friend and ally. The horizon's edge was waiting in orbit, his crew eager to hear the full story of what had transpired. Ashley greeted him at the airlock with a relieved smile. "Welcome back, Captain," she said. "We missed you." "I missed you too," Daniel replied. "All of you." The crew gathered in the conference room, and Daniel told them everything. From the moment the Locks engaged to the final conversation with the Queen, they listened intently, asking questions and offering their own perspectives. "You took a huge risk," Kyle observed. "Challenging her like that, staying passive would have been riskier," Daniel said. The Queen needed to be confronted with a different perspective. Being gentle would not have worked. "What do you think will happen now?" Ashley asked. "I think the Velthara Empire will change slowly but steadily," Daniel predicted. "The Queen is genuinely committed to reform, and she has the power to make it happen." As the horizon's edge prepared to depart, Daniel stood on the bridge and looked at the crystalline palace one last time. It had been his prison, but it had also been the site of an important transformation. "Course laid in for Earth," the navigator reported. "Ready to depart on your order." "One moment." Daniel said he sent a final message to Queen Zilaria. "Thank you for choosing to unlock the door. It made all the difference." Her reply came quickly. "Thank you for showing me the door should never have been locked in the first place." The horizon's edge jumped to faster than light speed, and the palace disappeared behind them. But Daniel knew that what had happened there would echo across the galaxy for years to come. He had proven that humans could survive captivity. But more importantly, He had proven that they could transform enemies into allies through patience and understanding, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat Ashley joined him on the bridge. "What are you thinking about? About locked doors," Daniel said. "And how humans have never been very good at accepting them as permanent. We do have a talent for finding ways through." Ashley agreed. Daniel smiled. "Or finding ways to convince others to open them voluntarily. That is even better." In the weeks that followed, the story of Captain Daniel Carter and the Velthara Queen spread across human space and beyond. It became